Well, I'd like to welcome everyone to this special presentation of LA Made, celebrating the wealth of talent right here in our own communities. Today's topic, the power of storytelling in all forms, words, images, and song. You've already had a taste of strong words from the pop-up photo gallery in the Taper hallway. And now let's settle in and enjoy the rest of the story.
Middle of the play, they had a pizza delivered. A pizza guy came. And they collected money from the audience, and they shared the pizza with us, and then they just kept talking, and I'd never seen anything like it. I didn't know what the hell they were doing, but I just thought, this is what I want to do with my life.
And in that millisecond, there's this unspoken dialogue that passes between us. I've been there, buddy. In the trenches of Philip. And without missing a beat, he returns the nod as if to say, "Oh, so you know."
Unfortunately, my swollen heart was obliterated a week later when Matthew broke up with me, saying he didn't have enough love in his heart for both me and Jesus. That year, the year that Jesus stole my boyfriend,
I am locked in Tompkins Square Park. And then I think, Greg, it's not that cold out here. I mean, they have to open the park at some time. Morning, right? So maybe I could just sit on a bench and wait it out. And then I think, no, that's homeless crazy talk. I think sometimes that's how it starts for some people.
I care nothing about the entire state of Wisconsin.
That evening, as we danced with locals and drank the corned beer and ate the unwrapped gun, which was a mistake, it became utterly apparent that this connection, these friendships that I thought had faded, hadn't gone anywhere. And I'd just been looking for them in the wrong place, in the wrong time.
I want it LA. Why they bring me down? I want it LA. No, won't it bring me down? Woo!
I could do that all night. Hello and welcome to Strong Words number 50. It's crazy. Claudette, you missed yourself in the opening AV. You were brilliant. Oh my gosh. We'll show it again later. How many are here for the very first time? How many virgins in the room? Oh, God love you. How many of you think you're at the Mark Taper Forum? We will not be presenting Harold Pinter's The Birthday Party today. But we're going to entertain you in a very different and exciting new way. My name is Larry Dean Harris, and I am the co-curator, co-founder, co-crazy guy who once a month drags you all out of your cozy homes to a beautiful little hovel in Atwater Village. And we do this, and it's so nice to be here in the library because I don't have to put the chairs away. So thank you all. We're going to get to the rules and all that good stuff later, but we like to start our party off with a song. And the very first call I made when I knew we were going to do this gig was to my dear friend and audience favorite, the king of croon, the captain of Christmas. He's so... You'll see. Please join me in welcoming back to our stage, our new stage, Mr. Todd Murray.
He's so big. I don't know, where is he going with that? I don't know. Thank you, Larry. I'm not used to being here when it's not Christmas. Usually I sing at their Christmas shows, but since we're doing a show of more than likely autobiographical stories, I thought that I would start with a song that I wrote that is about long-term relationships. How many of you are or have been in relationships more than 3 years, let's say? Okay. Because you know, like the first year, it's like all about sex. The second year, it's kind of about sex. The third year is like, do I even like this person? And then you keep going. So this is for you. See if you can relate. Walking down the streets of town, I pass a Miss and Mister. I think to myself, she's the diamond in his crown. But when I ask him, she's the blister on his side. In other times, I thought the rhymes of happily ever after were chirps of birds and bells and chimes. But as I get closer, the yelling and the screaming and the vociferation would raise the rafters of the house. So, when welcome to our home, any room to which you roam, a strange intonation or heightened altercation will not appear. I know it's queer, but you might hear. La da 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 da. If you are close or passing by me, or it's marital bliss spilling from inside me, 'cause it's the little things you do that send me reeling, like peanut butter in the jelly jar, or the covers on the bed that you are stealing. It's the sum of the parts that's all the things you are. Like Mr. Kern says, da 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 da. A little peck, a careless whisper, means more to me than any grandiosity you might display. Isn't it bliss, sir? After shopping, it's the bill to me you're handing. It's the headache that mysteriously occurs, or when the privy seat is down and I am standing. It's mascara on the towel, embroidered his and not hers. Those things that could annoy me, I enjoy me. I get verklempt, I start to stutter. Oh, I could scream and scratch or kick your Astor lifestyle, but instead, I just remember it's the chocolate you suck from the Hershey's bottle. It's the meal I made, you said, does this have too much salt? Or driving down Mulholland at full throttle. That kind of a thing makes others call it off, but not me, sir. And if my mood turns sour, or my disposition dour, from the 7th time you called in just an hour, you're a flower I'd like to pluck. I'm really fussy. I'm giving up. I guess I'm smitten. Even though you're maddening, it is saddening. The book of love, if your name's not written, 'cause it's the little things you do that keep me guessing. I'd be bored with someone else I could predict. If I haven't told you so, now I'm confessing. There's no one on earth but you who makes me sick in love. until our days are through. This I promise you I'll do. I'll put the lid on the jam, sweep up the floor, hold in the salt, put the seat down, strap myself in and grab another blanket and sing la da 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 forevermore. It's the little things I adore. Thank you. Marty Hillman.
Todd will be back later in the show. Time for some stories. You all came to hear some stories. I read a lot of stories. People say, what makes a good story? And I say, I like stories that aren't long. So we keep our stories tight. But every great story will make you laugh, and it'll make you cry, and it'll make you think. And if they're really doing their job, it'll feed your soul a little bit. And I was very picky because I have a really amazing crew, and I had the creme de la creme de la creme. I was very picky in selecting stories for you today because you mean that much to me. And some of our storytellers have been doing it for a very long time, and some of them are just getting started. Like our first performer, who the first time I saw her, I was like, oh, she's got it. And just to make her really nervous backstage, I won't tell her how important it is for the first story to sort of set the pacing of the show and establish tone, win the audience's love. I'm not at all worried. Please join me in welcoming back to our stage Italome Ohikware.
Hi, everyone. So, one muggy Miami afternoon, my parents surprised my brother and me with an early Christmas gift, an exorcism. They'd flown in a pastor from an African charismatic church, you know, one of those churches where they run on hot coals and perform exorcisms on a weekly basis. The exorcism was primarily intended for my brother, who's mentally ill. And my loving but very superstitious parents believed that my brother needed a miracle. Because despite years of scientific research, his mental illness wasn't simply a disorder, it was a demonic curse. Once it was removed, my brother would be cured and perfectly normal. My parents also believed that I needed a miracle, because the fact that I was 31, unmarried, unemployed, and childless clearly wasn't normal. And the fact that I made dark and cynical jokes about being 31, unmarried, unemployed, and childless also was not normal. When my demonic curse was removed, I'd get married, have 5 kids, and become a doctor or a lawyer. I'd be cured and normal, not dark and cynical. But who could blame me for being cynical? I'd watched my brother, a completely innocent and sweet human being, be ravaged by a severe psychotic illness. And no matter how hard he tried, how many medications he took, or how hard we prayed for a miracle, he didn't get better. He only got worse. And then there were my own struggles, which obviously paled in comparison to my brother's, but I'd never thought I'd get to my 30s and be without a career or a husband. And I mean, I tried, advanced degrees, online dating, Nothing worked, so I just shrugged and I said, that's life, and life sucks. But deep down, I didn't want to be cynical. I wanted my brother to get better. I wanted to meet Mr. Right. I wanted to have Mr. Right's kids. I wanted a whole white wedding and white picket fence. And most of all, I wanted to be a storyteller. I wanted to make films, shows, plays, any way I could tell stories that would touch people all over the world. But after years of disastrous dates, rejection letters, I had no idea how any of the above would happen, or if it was ever gonna happen. So hence the shrug. Life sucks. My family wasn't buying my life sucks motto. While my parents believed my curse could be exorcised, my relatives in Nigeria had a much better solution. They believed me and my brother had angered one of the 500 gods that they worship, because apparently all these gods have serious anger problems. So my relatives wanted my brother and me to come home and make peace with the gods by performing a traditional ceremony. The ceremony they wanted me to perform was one of the most revered and feared in Nigeria. It was the ceremony for Olokun, the water goddess, also known as the mermaid. According to my dad's tribe, it was a ceremony of purification. I'd be immersed in Olokun's sanctified river and then brought back up pure and new, cleansed from my wrongs. When my dad told me this, I said, "But I haven't done anything wrong." It is symbolic, he said. It is like getting baptized. Oh, I said. And you must sacrifice a white goat. Oh, that part's exciting. Then I asked my mom, "Mom, what's your tribe's version of the ceremony?" We throw babies in the river. She said that with a straight face. Babies? Yes, but only the deformed babies. Right, because it's perfectly okay to drown deformed babies? No, they do not always drown. If Olokun pushes the baby back up out of the water, it means it is a mermaid child. It is meant to be deformed, like a mermaid. Now, even for me, that was one of the darkest things I'd ever heard, but I also found it quite beautiful. The image of a goddess saving a child thrown away for being deformed and not normal, then gently pushing it back up into the world, affirming that it was never meant to be that way. But my parents didn't really believe in mermaids and gods and goddesses. Those were just myths. Demons, however, were very real to my parents. So there I was in their living room with this random African man about to exorcise demons out of me. "Let's get this over with," I mumbled, hoping I could still make it to my cardio stripper class. I tried not to laugh as the pastor and my parents convulsed and screamed gibberish to the heavens. Then came the worst part, the dreaded laying of hands. This was the miracle moment, when I was supposed to scream or faint. Something big and unexpected had to happen to show that the exorcism was working. But when the pastor laid his hands on my head, he went silent. He closed his eyes. "I am having a vision," he said. Oh, great, I thought. "You are a storyteller, yes?" "Yeah." "I see you sharing your stories and touching the lives of millions of people." "Yes, I see it. God is going to use your stories to change the world." And then something big and unexpected did happen. I broke down, crying. Because that crazy pastor saw a vision for me that I so desperately wanted, but I couldn't see myself. My parents swore they never told him I was a writer, and it didn't even matter, because at that moment, he exactly said what I needed to hear, to bring me out of my darkness and cynicism, to make me stop believing that life sucks and start believing in white weddings and white picket fences. As I lay on the floor crying, I thought, okay, how can I achieve this future? How can I become a successful married storyteller and mother when I'm so not even close to any of that? Then I felt something push me up off the floor. My parents would say it was my renewed soul, no longer a slave to demonic curse. My dark and cynical side would say, yeah, right, because 2 years later, I'm still unmarried and childless, and my brother is still very, very mentally ill. But now I believe in God and mermaids, and I believe God made my brother and me his little deformed mermaids. And if he made us that way, then we must be okay. And most of all, I believe it was God that pushed me off that floor that day, because deformed mermaids can still be great writers and wives and mothers. All they need is a gentle push. Thank you.
I always forget not to listen. Wow. Our next storyteller is my co-collaborator. He is the man who makes sure that everything connected to our little show looks beautiful. He takes pictures. He sets the chairs up just perfectly. He knows how to make a room look good. And so he sent me the story during a little hiatus that we had, and I immediately dismissed it, forgot about it, ignored him. And one day I called and I said, I don't have any good stories. We need one more for the show. And he very meekly said, well, you know, I kind of sent you that story. You're about to hear it. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome back Mr. Michael Hirabayashi.
Hirabayashi マイケルと申します。いつも写真を撮っている僕の姿を見たことあるかもしれませんが、今回は逆の観点からも参加させていただきたいと思います。どうぞよろしくお願いします。The dearth of Japaneseness during my childhood may have been what drove me to study the Japanese language in college. It was my major field of study. It was a way to somehow find out who I was and where I came from. The language was a window into what I thought was my culture. The funny thing is, the more proficient I became, the more I knew I couldn't identify strictly as a Japanese. At the same time, I don't strictly identify as an American either. I'm something else, something in between. I'm both, and I'm neither. My mother was born in Tacoma, Washington in 1922 to Japanese immigrant parents. Her parents, who had emigrated from Japan to America, were not permitted to become US citizens because of the Asian Exclusion Act. My mother's birth was just 17 years after Japan became the first non-Western country to defeat a Western army in modern warfare in the 1905 Russo-Japanese War. She spent her youth growing up in small-town Tacoma, Washington. During her preteen and teen years, in the 1930s and early 40s, Imperial Japan was expanding its control over Korea, Manchuria, and extending south to the rest of Asia. Relations between the US and Japan were deteriorating. On August 1st, 1941, the US established an embargo of all oil exports to Japan after Japan invaded French Indochina. The embargo hurt Japan badly. Japan needed raw materials to feed its increasingly industrial economy. My grandmother Sumiyoshi, aka Ba-chan, as most first-generation immigrants, had strong emotional ties with the old country. She wanted her children to know their background, their culture, their language, their roots. Sensing the worsening relations between the US and Japan, she wanted to return to Japan one last time before war broke out. She and grandfather Sumiyoshi, aka Ji-chan, gathered up their 4 children and traveled to Japan. Their kids, having been born and brought up in Tacoma, knew nothing of Japan and were essentially young American kids. My mother was 19 at the time. The trip to Japan threw these American kids into the totally alien environment of pre-war imperial Japan. The Japan that was transforming itself from feudal agrarianism into an expansionist industrial empire competing with the West. It was the Japan that had allied itself with Nazi Germany and fascist Italy. December 7th, 1941, found my mother's family in Japan. The attack on Pearl Harbor threw the US and Japan into a state of war. Diplomatic relations were severed, Japan's borders were sealed. My mother's family couldn't leave the country and were forced to spend the remainder of the war there. The Sumiyoshi kids, who spoke the language of the enemy, English, who had grown up in the enemy's country, the USA, and who had the strange customs and clothing of the enemy, were looked upon with great suspicion, especially by the Kempeitai, or the special military police. They were often questioned, harassed, and bullied. My mother, at some point during the war, moved from Hiroshima to Tokyo to work and spent the latter half of the war there. My gay Uncle Joe was conscripted into the Imperial Japanese Army. I can't even begin to imagine what he had to endure at the hands of those fascist military goons. The rest of the family continued to live in Hiroshima. Meanwhile, in the San Jose farming community, my father's family was facing what all Californian Japanese Americans faced during the war: the racist rantings of the Hearst newspapers calling for the internment of Americans of Japanese descent. When President Roosevelt signed Executive Order 9066 on February 19, 1942, my father's family lost their farm and was thrown into the Topaz War Relocation Center in Utah, one of 10 camps for the internment of Japanese Americans. Fred Korematsu, who challenged the constitutionality of that executive order in 1944, was also interned there. The Supreme Court ultimately ruled against him and in favor of the government in a 6-3 decision that still stands to this day. Gordon Hirabayashi, no relation to my family, who was arrested for violating the curfew in Seattle, Washington, and refusing to abide by the executive order, also challenged the government and took his case to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court upheld the curfew order, and he was sentenced to prison. All adult internees were issued a loyalty questionnaire. They were asked if they were willing to fight in the US military. They were asked to swear allegiance to the US and renounce loyalty to the Japanese emperor. My grandparents' generation was in something of a catch-22. They couldn't become US citizens. They were being thrown into internment camps, and they were being asked to renounce their country of origin. My father volunteered for the Army and was sent to military language school. His family remained in the camp. He was subsequently sent to the Pacific Theater as an intelligence officer with the MIS, or the Military Intelligence Service. He spent the war intercepting Japanese communications and interviewing Japanese POWs. On Monday, August 6th, 1945, my Aunt Nobi told me she heard air raid sirens a little before 8 o'clock in the morning. After the all-clear signal was sounded, she went outside to see a single, shiny B-29 bomber flying high over Hiroshima. Everyone thought, because of the height of its flight path, it must be a reconnaissance flight. If it were a bombing raid, there would have been more than one B-29 bombers, and they would have been flying much, much lower. No one knew that it was the Enola Gay, and it was going to be dropping Little Boy onto Hiroshima. 8:15 a.m. Aunt Nobi remembers a blinding flash of white light, and moments later, a huge blast. The house was demolished in an instant. My aunts and grandparents called out to each other in the rubble. They had all somehow survived what turned out to be the world's first atomic bomb used in war. As Aunt Nobi tells it, an elevated train track separated the house from the hypocenter of the bomb. That earthen mound deflected much of the force of the bomb, but their home was in ruins. Hiroshima was in ruins. Ji-chan and Ba-chan Sumiyoshi gathered their family together and walked to a relative's home outside of the city. 53,644 people died that Monday morning in Hiroshima. In Tokyo, my mother heard radio news broadcasts that the Americans had dropped a new type of bomb on the civilian population of Hiroshima. All communication lines between Hiroshima and Tokyo were either down or overloaded. She couldn't contact her family. She needed to find out if they had survived. The only way to do that was to physically go there. The trains that went to Hiroshima were overrun with people scrambling to get there. In the chaos at the station, my mother climbed through a window and secured a spot on a train 2 days after the bomb. That train, after hours of travel from Tokyo, came to a stop at the outskirts of Hiroshima. My mother climbed down out of the train to see that the bomb had vaporized the tracks that ran into the city. So she walked. She walked in the general direction of the family home. She walked through utter devastation. She remembered the flies and how they swarmed around the interior of a burnt-out trolley car tipped over outside. She said the flies covered the ceiling, looking like an undulating piece of black cloth. The force of the blast had sprayed the interior of the trolley with bits of human flesh, and the flies were feasting. She saw bloated black bodies floating down the rivers that run through the city. People went to the rivers to find relief from the radiation burns they suffered during the blast. Many succumbed to their wounds and drowned in the river. When she got to the house, there was a water cistern still standing in the ruins. Ba-chan had written on it, "We've gone to the relative's house in the countryside." My mother began to make her way to that country house. There were many people walking. The wounded, the burned, dazed peoples whose clothing was tattered from the force of the blast, relatives searching for their loved ones. There was no transportation. Somehow, in this mass of distressed people, my mother and her uniformed younger brother Joe found each other. They both then walked together and rejoined their family in the country. 3 days after the Hiroshima bomb, Fat Man was dropped on Nagasaki on August 9th, 1945. On August 14th, Emperor Hirohito, for the first time ever, spoke directly to the Japanese people over the radio. And with that speech, he stopped the Japanese from continuing their fight, and the war finally ended. My father went to Japan with General MacArthur and the occupation forces and continued to work as an intelligence officer after the war. It was there, in the heady years of post-war Japan's reconstruction, that my parents met, fell in love, and were married. My mother was working for the Japanese Red Cross, and he was a young U.S. Army lieutenant. While I was growing up on U.S. military bases in Japan, my parents always stressed that we were Americans first and foremost. We never talked about their experiences during the war. We didn't learn to speak the Japanese language. We spoke only English at home. We were given only Anglo names. I think that may have had something to do with their wartime experiences. My search for who I was and where I came from finally led me to ask my parents what their experiences were during the war. My father's family suffered from wartime hysteria here in the U.S. To quote General John DeWitt, the Army general who was in command of the West Coast at the time, "A Jap is a Jap. Whether they're loyal or not, they're a dangerous element." My mother's family suffered at the hands of the myopic fascist police in Japan. And then an atomic bomb was dropped on them. The racial and religious tribalism that is spreading throughout the US today is based on that same xenophobic fear that gripped 1940s America and Japan. It's the fear of the other, the fear of the different. I hope we don't forget the past. I hope we can learn from it. When war begins, everyone suffers. Thank you.
Michael Hirabayashi. The great thing about telling stories is they travel really easily. So we've taken Strong Words on the road. We've gone to Palm Springs. We've gone to Toledo, Ohio. We went to North Hollywood. We've got a few more destinations coming up this year. And one of my favorite traveling companions, we haven't killed each other yet, and I adore her so, is one of our favorite performers. People always want to know when she's coming back. She's coming back in about 10 seconds. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Marlena Nichols.
That's my pageant wave. Y'all, how you doing? Hey, how you doing, baby? How's it going? All right. So I want to talk about my family. And my mom and I are very close. And we are close because we love to shop. That's really how we bond, right? So shopping with my mother is a lot like shopping with Karl Lagerfeld. You know, if Lagerfeld were starring in a Tarantino movie. She'll be at the other end of the store and she'll yell at me, Marlena, grab the silk blouse, the kitten heels, the leopard clutch, and the rest we leave to hell. She shops, she really lives and shops by her intuition. You know, she'll call me on the phone and she'll say, Marlena, I have a feeling that we need to go to New York because I think we'll find shoes. And you know what? We do. We've shopped in Paris, we've shopped in LA, we've shopped in Berlin. And then a couple of years ago, she calls me and she's like, Marlena, I have a feeling that we need to go shopping in DC. Okay, so I love a good pantsuit, but I've never really thought of our nation's capital as a fashionista's paradise. And she's on the phone and she's like, well, I mean, mostly we're going to see your brother. Right? And that's when the 14-year-old in me is like, no. Honestly, I just have no desire to see my brother. I haven't seen my brother in 10, maybe 12 years. He doesn't return texts. He doesn't return calls. We haven't shared a Christmas together since I was probably 12. You remember that book, He's Just Not That Into You? I read it. I get it. But the crazy thing is that growing up, like, I was crazy in love with my brother. So there's this age difference of about 12 years between us, and I was just sure that he knew everything. So when I was in kindergarten learning how to tie my shoes, my brother was studying chemical engineering in college. When our father passed away, I was in high school taking my high school placement exam in Memphis, Tennessee. My brother was chief navigator on a missile destroyer in the Persian Gulf. I finished high school. He has a family. He's a career naval officer. He works for the Department of Defense. It's like our lives have been separated by time and space, and we don't have any shared memories to tether us. I guess in the end, I just don't feel smart enough to talk to him. Well, Marlena, he's invited us. I have a feeling that I have to go. And if I have to go, you have to go. Because if you don't go, then I can't go, because I don't know how to buy an airline ticket. Besides, it's a capital city. I'm sure there will be good shopping. Just to clarify for everybody, D.C. is really just the closest airport to where my brother and his family live. Where they actually live is in Maryland, off of a 2-lane highway where the shopping mall reigns king. So we find ourselves, we're waiting on his porch, and I do have to say my mom and I look good. All of that nervous ironing back at the hotel has really paid off. She's the height of elegance. My mom is wearing this red English wool jacket that she's made herself. I'm in a vintage mod Japanese coat. We wanted to look nice for him, you know. So he answers the door, and he's smiling. And he's kind of sporting this, like, odd Hemingway beard. He's a little thinner than I remember. But you know what? I see traces of my whole family dancing in his eyes. All that childhood love that I have, all of that comes back. And he says really quietly, I'm sorry, it's been so long. Yeah, well, I mean, we're together now, I say. And he kind of laughs under his breath. And then my sister-in-law steps between us. So maybe it wasn't really just time and space that had been keeping us apart all of these years. You should know that she's knitting. She's a knitter. As in, she has a roll of yarn tucked up under her armpit, and one of her needles pokes me in the side as we hug. She says, "Oh, it's so nice to see you again. It's been years. What can I make you? How about a nice Afghan? Would you like an Afghan? What do you think of a waffle motif? I'm going to put you on the project list. You'll be number 8 on the project list." Everyone loves my work, but 8 eventually becomes number 1, and then you'll have your Afghan. Now, I remember my sister-in-law as being messy, but someone has escalated over the years, and I think that now she's actually a hoarder, but with a Costco card, right? So everything is just there in bulk. And I swear to you, there is a feline army of 13 cats that comes out from the pallets of paper towels and sodas, and there is a one-eyed tabby. I am there, I'm sneezing, and I'm surrounded, and there's this one-eyed tabby that comes up to me, and I swear to you, she's saying, like, "May the odds be ever in your favor." My mom pulls me back onto the porch before I have an asthma attack, and we're standing there awkward until my brother says, "We have reservations for brunch. You hungry?" So we do what estranged families do. We go eat, you know, and the Officers Club in Annapolis is beautiful. It's got these floor-to-ceiling windows. My brother takes a seat at a table, and he's just kind of gazing over the Potomac. The room, omelet stations, cheesecake towers. There's like a 40-pound salmon. We kind of stack the table with all of these different plates. We're trying to encourage him to eat because he looks a little thin. It starts to rain. And then he just kind of blurts out. He says, "The machinery of my body is malfunctioning. I couldn't swallow a pizza crust, so I went to the doctor." And then he starts explaining this diagnosis that he's received. And immediately I think of my dad, because it's a similar stage 4. And he's like, "It's not what Dad had," as if he's reading my mind. If we take into consideration all of the data and the possible medical trials at Johns Hopkins, I plan on being an outlier. And the waitress bends over and refills his coffee. My sister-in-law, still knitting. "You'll be moving to number 7 on the list soon, and then you have your Afghan. You sure you don't want an Afghan?" Yeah. So after brunch, we do the other thing that estranged families do, which is we go drink. Mom rides in the other car, and then my brother rides with me 30 miles down a 2-lane highway to his favorite winery. And he leans back in the passenger seat and he asks, "Mind if I eat?" He unzips this mini lunchbox cooler, the kind that secretaries take to lunch, basically what I take to lunch, and he sets up this portable lab. Like my brother all of a sudden is this mad scientist, and he's pouring water into this pink powder, and he's pouring it back and forth between these beakers, and then he raises his shirt, and he has this white tube that's coming out of his stomach, and that's where he pours it in. And let me tell you, this stuff smells rancid. I have to open the window, and he apologizes. He's like, I'm really sorry, sis, about the smell, but if it smelled like McDonald's, everybody be doing it. I've streamlined my diet. It's only water, wine, and mint chip Haagen-Dazs that pass these lips. Oh, I could tease him. That's my dream diet. How is it that you are always ahead of me? What can I say? Early adapter. Despite the situation that we're in, like I start laughing, he starts laughing, this is banter. Do you know how long I have waited for banter? So I keep it going. He keeps it going. He says, yeah, I even have a physicist now. Like in your closet? Did you kidnap a physicist? What are you talking about? He's like, no. He's just working on my radiation, so they know how much to give me. Is he cute? Well, I don't know. I haven't met him yet. Well, see, I need to stop dating actors. So could you ask if he's single? Well, I mean, physicists usually hang with other physicists because who else is going to talk to a physicist? There must be at least one that we can find for you. Oh my God, I've missed you, I say. And then I wait for that, you know, the I missed you too. Yeah, that doesn't come yet. All right, so we're at the winery. My brother immediately joins his wife, who's already at the bar knitting. And so she measures this section that she's knitted against his chest. And I look at them and I swear to you, she would cocoon him in alpaca if she could. I go to find my mom, who is roaming the gift shop with her head stuck in the neckline of a sequins t-shirt that reads, Jesus drank too. And I pull it off of her head, and she's upset. She's in tears. And she tells me, well, I was looking for a present for him. And I offer her a glass of wine, which she quickly waves away and tells me, I refuse to waste calories on wine made in Maryland. So we drive back to our hotel, and it's not my responsibility to make my mother feel better. I can't, but I can at least try. And she's in the car, and she's like, well, it shouldn't be happening, Marlene. You know, I was supposed to go first, and then your father, and then him, and then you. And your father messed up the order, but I'm still the mother, so I go first. And I'm like, Mom, he's not dead yet. And she's like, well, I know that. And there's this moment where I think, well, do you still want to buy him a present? And my mother waves out, looking out the window, and just is like, where, Marlene? Where? So I do have to scan the GPS, and I find that our best option is we're going to go to Marshall's. Going to Marshall's. Turn the car around. We arrive at Marshall's 20 minutes before closing, and golf shirts and Calvin Klein briefs are just being thrown around in the air. And my mother is saying, you know, like, how is this possible? My child is going to die surrounded by cats and Afghans. Maybe there's a nice robe. Do you see any nice robes? Why don't they have any robes? And I take her over by the shoulder, and we turn, and we see this display of medicine bags. And they're gorgeous. They're brown, cognac. They have the zipper tops, and inside it's like a navy blue lining with white polka dots. It even has a zipper on the bottom, so you can just throw your razor in. and be gone. And it's the perfect gift because I know that my brother is going to use it. And it is the worst possible gift because I know that my brother is going to use it. And we buy wrapping paper, tissue paper, gift bag, ribbon, bow, a card. We take it back to the hotel. This is the most magnificently wrapped present you have ever seen. And it sits there on our desk just sort of waiting. So the next day, my brother comes to the hotel, and he's alone. And we get 1 hour. His eyes light up when he opens the gift. He says, actually, "Is this one of those zipper bottoms? Thank you, I can really use this." And then he and my mother, they start talking about his childhood. There were camping trips in Yugoslavia with my German grandparents. The months it took him to make a sound blowing into his flute. The 3 years he took nothing but tuna fish sandwiches to lunch. And I'm sitting there with them, and I'm really trying to be a part of this, but like this all happened before I was ever even around. No shared memories, only time and space. My sister-in-law arrives way too soon to collect him, and we have to say goodbye. And so I give him one more bear hug, and he leans down and he says to me, "I'll see you soon." Thank you.
Stories can be told in all kinds of ways, through words, through songs, and through photos. You passed on your way in our pop-up art gallery with our featured artist of the month, but we thought we'd show you a fuller expression of his work. Mr. Russell?
Let me see the world with clouds, take me to the world, out where I can push through crowds, take me to the world, a world that smiles with streets instead of aisles, where I can walk for miles with you. Take me to the world that's real, show me how it's done, teach me how to laugh, to feel, move me to the sun, just hold my hand whenever we arrive. Take me to the world where I can be alive. Let me see the world that smiles, take me to the world, somewhere I can walk for miles, take me to the world, with all around, things growing in the ground, where birds that make a sound are birds. We shall see the world come true,
Because we spare no expense in entertaining you, he comes all the way from Toledo, Ohio, my good friend, Mr. Steve Hansen.
Good afternoon. I'm humbled and honored to be amidst these storytellers, and I'm reminded why I set out on this path of storytelling so many years ago. I told a lot of stories to my parents, but most of them were of the fictional, especially when it came to grades. But then I found my father's camera. It was an Argus C3. And at the ripe old grade, I think of the 8th or 9th grade, I knew it was going to be my instrument for life, and telling stories one frame at a time. So I've been really, really lucky to do a great deal of travel. And although I segued out of photojournalism and into brand and really getting people, I think I've spent most of my adult life getting people to buy stuff they really don't need. It has allowed me to do a great deal of travel, as I mentioned, and I've always had my trusty camera by my side, and so it was my way of telling my story. So thank you very much.
Our next storyteller comes with a disclaimer. He tends to get a little saucy, and when I said we're going to do a show at the library, he got all excited, and then I said, you have to be PG. We'll see how it goes. Please welcome back one of our audience favorites. Everybody adores him, Mr. Jimmy Doyle.
Happy St. Patrick's Day, everyone. You know, I'm not, he's so scared I'm going to swear. But, I mean, it's happening, and here I am, and no, I'll be good. Thank you to the library for having us. We're all being very earnest because we're performing at the library. And there's a green room, a dressing room, and but you can't talk in it, so I've been hushed by a librarian today. But I can't swear. Oddly enough, this story is from like 4 font sizes ago. I know my audience. There are some middle-aged ladies here with very earnest looks trying to talk to me, and I'm like on my phone because personality disorders. This is a story I wrote about my father, and I wanted something more Irish, and I thought I'd write something again, and Larry wanted this because it's one of his favorite stories. And then I realized this morning, because, a 2 o'clock show, I realized that the last time I saw my father alive was 30 years ago on St. Patrick's Day. Yeah, it's always been a... I have a friend in Ireland. He's a singer called Brian Kennedy, and he has a song called Anniversary, and he says, someday everything is going to be every day will be an anniversary. And that's how it starts to feel. But anyway, this is an old story called Father in Heaven. You guys would have hated me in the late 80s. I was heavily into self-help and recovery lingo. I even had a teddy bear that represented my inner child that I would hold and console. My everyday conversations involved telling anyone who would listen what a bastard my father was. He died in 1988 of a heart attack after a long struggle with the world, and I spent the next few years convincing myself that I didn't miss him. I remembered all the horrible things he'd done over the years, how much he yelled, and what contempt he had for my sexuality. I had spent most of my childhood hating him for looking like, but not being like, Brian Keith from Family Affair. He wasn't even as close to being as cool as Brian Keith. He dressed all wrong, and he was always yelling at Nixon on the TV. I mean, he did do some cool stuff, like get us into places. He was a pretty big deal in the pipe fitters union, and he always knew a guy. You know, like the guy who was in charge of some kind of construction project at the Shriners. And we could get into the Shriners Auditorium and see the circus, but we had to go in the back door. But the guy that my dad knew would always like bring us backstage, and we could see like the elephants or whatever, so that was kind of cool. And he always, every year, we got to take St. Patrick's Day off school so we could go to the parade in Chicago and even ride on the float from the Plumbers Union. And if it was on a Friday during Lent, he'd call the priest and get us dispensation so we could have hot dogs. He said he called the priest. My father was better in groups than alone. You never wanted to be alone none of us ever wanted to be alone with him. Since I'm the youngest and I was the only one at home for a number of years, that meant more expensive vacations, real milk, as I'm constantly reminded by my elder siblings who had powdered milk once but liked to turn it into Angela's ashes and act like, you had a stick, we had to share one. You know, it was Chicago. I did have my own bathroom, still paying for that. But there was bad news. I was alone with Ma and Dad. Ma was a manic depressive, or as we called it in those days, dramatic. She took her own life when I was 12 years old, leaving me alone with my father. I think the dread I felt being left alone with him could only have been matched by his dread of being left alone with me. I was 12 years old when my mother died, a very unattractive adolescent, lots of acne, and very femme. Very femme. This is as butch as it gets. I'd been quite femme since I was 2 and wanted to wear a chapel veil to church. I ruined my Aunt Kathy's wedding because I wanted to carry an umbrella down the aisle as ring bearer because I'd recently seen Mary Poppins and thought it gave a bit of celebration to the event. So after my mother's death, here's poor Dad left to raise a young fag, having been left by the dramatic wife. My father got things done. He was immensely admired in the pipe fitters union. He'd stopped a wildcat strike on his own out on the steel mill grounds, standing up on the car roof and using a megaphone. He was an operatic tenor who sang Ave Maria at everybody's wedding. He's also always the one who got involved first. Like when the anti-Catholic John Birch Society was taking over our precinct, he ran and became precinct captain. He drank whiskey with the priests and got them to build the new gym at St. Bede's. And when somebody's kid fell in the lake, he jumped off the pier with his clothes on to save her, which embarrassed me to no end. I was 11 years old, and this little kid fell in the drink, and everybody, what's going on? And my dad jumps right in. And quite frankly, you'd rather see a toddler drown than see your dad coming out of the lake with wet Sandsabelt slacks from Sears. I mean, they had 3 other kids. Of course, when everyone in Ireland thought I was a girl that same year, I'm sure he wasn't as proud as they get. But we tolerated each other. He was pretty hip for his generation, never hitting us with a closed fist, always had a job, sometimes said I love you and kissed and hugged. His best friend was Italian. When my mother was having an episode and she'd lock herself in the bedroom and cry for days at a time, he'd make dinner. One time when Ma was having a particularly bad episode, he showed me the locks in the Chicago River and how the water goes up and down and goes in a different direction. That was cool. And we used to go out in his friend's boat, Don Enright's boat, and he said I was a really good sailor because everybody else got seasick and I didn't. So whatever. I mean, I guess no matter what, he was my father and he was there. As lame as I sometimes thought he was, which was always, he was there. My father didn't have episodes. Years of therapy have taught me the value of someone who's just there and gets the job done. But I never knew in my heart that it was okay until Cardinal Bernardine died. After getting sober and going through a very bad, abusive 5-year relationship, I had started therapy, and I didn't hate my father as much anymore. I had begun to mourn him. I didn't even hate the Catholic Church anymore as much. I'd come to realize that everybody was just kind of doing the best they could in those days, so what the hell? I'd done lots of work on my spirituality and realized that it's all metaphor and it's whatever metaphor works. Cardinal Bernardine was the Archbishop of Chicago at the time and in the 90s, and he'd been accused of sexually molesting this guy. But the guy was all messed up and he had AIDS, and he ended up recanting, the guy who made these accusations. He was just so angry at the church, and he had been molested, but he thought, you know, if I accuse the cardinal, it'll be better. But then he recanted, and Cardinal Bernardine invited him to the cathedral to a special mass that he said to reconcile with boys and girls who'd been abused by priests. And he had this man stand at the altar with him at mass. And I was like, well, okay. That's kind of putting your money where your mouth is. Bernardine was very into the gay and lesbian community. This was back when there was going to be some sort of détente with the gay and lesbian community, but he really tried. And then he got cancer, and then he found out it was terminal, Cardinal Bernardine did, and he asked the archdiocese to help him and to bless him and to help him die. And when he died, it affected me. And I said, you know what, my friend Michelle, I said, let's go to the wake. Let's go to the cathedral. Let's go to the wake. I just wanted to go to the wake. The man had died during one of the coldest winters in Chicago history, like freeze the boogers in your nose cold, where if you wear your glasses, it freezes on your head kind of thing. And of course, there was the Cardinal's wake. It's not like you could just park there. We had to park like miles away, it felt like, near the Shriners Auditorium, coincidentally. And so we're all bundled up and we're walking to where the cathedral is, and we pass this family, mom, dad, 2 kids are kind of going ahead in the crosswalk. 1 kid's totally passed out in the dad's arms, and they have mass cards from the wake, and we sort of give them that Catholic, like, that you do. Protestants don't know it, but we do a thing. And after we pass this family and we're going across the street, we hear this shriek of brakes and a thud. And we look back, and one of the children had actually been hit by a car and was flying, like, it was really, really bad. And Michelle McAndrew and I, redhead that she is, we didn't even think. We just jumped into traffic, and we're, like, stopping traffic, and we had to ask if somebody had a cell phone because they were very unusual. We had a car phone, and can you call 911? And it was horrifying. And then I ran over to the mother, who was just beside herself, and I said, do you need a priest? Because the kid wasn't moving, and she says, yes, get a priest. And I run like 3 or 4 blocks, I don't even know, to the cathedral, and there's this long line there, and there's a couple priests there. So I grab the first priest I see, and I say, Father, you know, this kid, he got hit, and he starts running. Well, he doesn't start running, because I swear to God, the man was 102 if he's a day. Okay, and I say, Father, this is what's happening, and I'm not lying. I wouldn't lie on St. Patty's Day to fucking... I can't help it. All right. So I swear to you, I would not lie to you. The man is 102. Okay, maybe that's exaggerated. Very old priest. And I say, Father, this kid, and you need to bless this kid. And he goes, I'll be right there. He's Irish, the priest. And he's coming, and we're running. And well, we're not running. We have to rest. And we get to the kid, and the kid, blesses. We get to the kid, and Father McGillicuddy, whatever his name is, he blesses the child. Now, the good thing is that it was Chicago in the winter, and anyone who grew up in the Midwest knows, and you're a little kid and your mother dresses you up when it's cold, you're just sort of layered, and you're sort of like wrapped in bubble wrap, sort of. So this kid had been hit at speed by a car, but like twisted his ankle, like, because he was like he bounced. So you were worried. So anyway, so that's that, and we got the priest, and then we head back to the cathedral, right? Because we still have to go to the wake, and your man, Father Shaughnessy or whatever his name was, he says, I can't wait in the line again. This long line for, like half a mile, and the man probably had hours to live. He says, So I said, right. I said, let me handle this, Father. So I go up, there's 2 cops, right, at the doorway. And I say, excuse me, I'm sure you heard there was a kid who got hit by a car. I grabbed this priest out of the front of the line so he could get in. Is there any way he can come in? And the one priest goes, well, I'm a Catholic. He can do whatever he wants. And the other one goes, I ain't stopping a priest from going in a church. And then Father McGillicuddy says, I don't go anywhere without Jimmy Doyle. And that is how Michelle and I and a Catholic priest were ushered in by 2 Chicago police officers in dress whites to the altar where Cardinal Bernardine lay in repose. And as I was walking up to the casket, I thought of the line from the gospel, "This is my beloved son, listen to him." And in that moment, my dad and I were even. He taught me how to be a stand-up guy and to know right from wrong. A priest doesn't wait in line for a cardinal's wake after giving a sacrament when Red Doyle's kid is around. Right is right. So we're sitting in the pew later, Michelle and I and the priest, and I showed him my dad's rosary. There was a choir singing, beautiful men's choir, and the priest told me it was the Chicago Gay Men's Chorus, and Cardinal Bernardine had specifically asked that the Gay Men's Chorus sing at his wake. And in that moment, with the Irish priest and the cardinal up in the box and the Gay Men's Chorus singing, all was well between me and my dad and our God. Thank you.
Jimmy Doyle. I got promoted. I told everybody how to do this, and then I forgot. I was like, make sure. All right, there we go. Wow. How about today? Right? Thank you, Wendy Westgate, for making this all happen. Thank you, Russell Pyle, for making everything perfect. Thank you all for coming. We got another song, so don't go anywhere. But I'm going to tell another story about Catholics and my dad. We did a show in Palm Springs last weekend, and Marlena got up and told a story about cancer and... What was it? She's not listening to me. She's backstage on her phone. She told a story about cancer and something. And then Jeff got up and told a story about cancer and something, and I'm backstage like tearing my story up because it's about cancer and something. So then we come back and we do another set of stories, and everybody's story is about drowning. And I'm backstage, and I've got a story about cancer and something and drowning. It just happens. I saw God this summer in the middle of a cornfield in rural Indiana, and I wasn't even looking for him. God and I, we go way back, see. I was 9 when we joined this small Pentecostal church in Ohio. My mom had just died, and my dad was so lost. We all were. So on the occasion of my 12th birthday, the year my friends were getting dirt bikes and stereos, my dad and my stepmother said, "What do you want for your birthday?" And I, being the total little something that I was, folded my arms and said, "If you don't know me well enough by now, I got a Bible." So I was already drumming for Jesus. Now that's a whole other story, but soon I was a starter on the Bethel Assembly of God Bible quiz team. Kabam! In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The same was in the beginning with God. John chapter 1, verses 1 and 2. Kabam! Galatians chapter 2, verse 8 and 9. Ephesians chapter 2, verse 11. Philippians chapter 3, verse 3. And Colossians 2:11 and 3:11. Those would be the 7 scriptural references to circumcision by the Apostle Paul. You've heard of athletes, mathletes, Nazareth-letes. Now, I loved the word. It was concrete, indisputable. When someone contested an answer, we would tore into those well-worn pages of Scripture for resolution. You couldn't argue with the Bible, or could you? See, there's this book called Misquoting Jesus by Bart Ehrman, who mastered the ancient Greek, Hebrew, and Latin languages and spent years studying the oldest, earliest manuscripts of the Bible. I'm talking 1.0, 1.1. Bart would have killed on my Bible quiz team. Now, in the beginning, there were no photocopiers or fact-checkers in Egypt and Jerusalem. The Gutenberg press, to them, was like flying car. They're like, what? Bibles were transcribed by hand, the hands of man. And what Bart discovered in comparing one version with another was not only human error, but human embellishment. Did you know? Mary Magdalene isn't even mentioned in the earliest versions. Bart found her later, written in the margins. Mary Magdalene, she sings that sexy ballad in Jesus Christ Superstar. Turns out, she's not even in the original cast. So what do I do with that? Should I scream and shout? Should I speak of love, let my feelings out? I never thought it'd come to this. What's it all about? All right, but let's forget about Andrew Lloyd Webber for a second and talk about this movie they showed us in church, right? A Thief in the Night. Anybody? Wendy. It explains so much. It's all about the rapture, right? Capital R. Freaked me out. Not the movie, the song. The whole idea that if you weren't saved, and by saved I mean accepting Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior and being baptized in the Spirit and redeemed by the blood of the Lamb and thereby turning your life over to God, if you didn't do that...
Life was filled with guns and war, and all of us got trampled on the floor. I wish we'd all been ready. The children died, the days grew cold, a piece of bread, goodbye.
I think the rapture's happening tomorrow, by the way.
I wish we'd all been ready. And there's no time to change your mind. The sun has come and you've been left behind.
And that's when I took off my fear goggles and got the HE double toothpicks out of there. And I started searching for God. And God took my hand and led me to the Catholic Church. Fresh out of college, I get a job directing theater at Cardinal Stritch High School. On my first day, the priest and principal, Father Murray, that's not his real name, takes me into the school store, holds up a pair of Cardinal Stritch boxer shorts, and says, "You can have these if you put them on for me." I was 22. His name's not Father Murray, don't worry. It's Father Frank Murray. So I tried Judaism, right? I found a nice Jewish family. That's never got a laugh before. That's funny. So I find this nice Jewish family, and I love them more than my real family. They're like simpatico, right? And I like the rituals. I like the Hebrew prayers and the sense of community, the commitment to philanthropy, and the language. Shtick dreck. I love it when I throw out a little piece of Yiddish and people ask, "Oh, are you Jewish?" And just for a moment, I'm one of the chosen people. I thought about the converting, right? The Brits could be a bit awkward. But then I was like, what is with religion and circumcision? Like Meryl Streep, I have doubt. I turn on the television, and there's Jim Bakker, the creepiest of all the fallen televangelists. He's back on TV. Jim Bakker is saying that Hurricane Harvey is God's punishment to the gays. Right? If God really wanted to punish gays, he would just kill Madonna. So I finally gave up. I gave up looking for God. Maybe you have too. This world is getting so scary. I can't handle another tweet, another Kardashian, another school shooting, another sex scandal, Mitch McConnell. I have so much doubt. So the prophet Tony Kushner says, a great preacher starts with doubt, right? He starts in the scary places, in the places where God is silent, in the places where God seems cruel, in the places where the world is not just, and where people are ground to dust by monstrous, even satanic forces where God doesn't intervene. The White House. You start there and progress toward whatever hope for change and light you can find. So I'm flying back to Ohio last summer. The Uber picks me up in Detroit, and I settle in for the hour-long drive to Toledo. My driver is Ibrahim, and I ask him what it's like to be Muslim in Michigan. He laughs and tells me he's waiting to apply to med school in Ann Arbor. He's already a doctor in the country he fled, but he's willing to go back to school and start over in America to build a better life for his family. We talk about everything, politics and religion and art museums and kids and everything but Game of Thrones. He loves it. I don't do that Middle-earth. He drops me off, shakes my hand, and I think, if only everyone could take an Uber with Ibrahim. I tip him 50%. I see my dad a few days later at the Harris family reunion, and I laugh at the notion of Bill Harris taking an Uber with Ibrahim. My dad belongs to the NRA, voted for you-know-who, thinks he's doing a good job, watches Fox News, tithes 10% to the church, and as you can imagine, he loves that his only begotten son is G-A-Y. Our relationship has been well documented in plays and stories. To invoke Meryl again, it's complicated. I used to dread these things, these reunions, but lately I actually look forward to them. We congregate in a shelter house in the middle of a cornfield. There is no address. I'm not kidding. No street signs. Siri doesn't even know this place exists. You just go, you turn left at the goat. But it's great, you know. Outside, the children romp on the playground equipment of our youth. Cold steel merry-go-rounds and treacherous monkey bars, no longer deemed safe in today's child-coddling world. My cousin Johnny, one of the twins, the cuter of the two, stands with me and watches them play. We jingle the changes in our pocket, the way our dads used to do. He asks about California. I say, it's home. I ask about his son, the professional baton twirler who travels the world. He mentions his son's partner and awaits my response. I smile. He smiles. I help the women with the food. I help the men with the chairs. That's just how I was raised. And now it's time to pray. Prayer is big in the Harris family, and there's been an upset in the chain of command. The minister in the family has died since the last reunion, and as elder male, the responsibility falls to my father. He begins, "Our Heavenly Father," and the words spill out effortlessly. His voice is commanding. His words are eloquent and lyrical. So many years in the church have taught him so well. And I realize I'm crying. Afterward, we all enjoy the fried chicken, real garden tomatoes, casseroles, and carbohydrates lovingly prepared by good Christian women. The best. I tell my dad what a good job he did. "You really think so?" he asks. I nod, and I say the thing I've waited my entire life for my father to say to me. "I'm proud of you, Dad." And that's when I saw God and all his grace. No, not in my dad. He was in me. Somehow, God found me stranded there in the margins, next to Mary Magdalene and so many of us out there searching, and said, "Don't wait for someone else to do or say the right thing. You go first." And then I had another helping of my cousin Charlene's banana pudding. Because when you're open to the idea, God can appear in many different forms. I'm going to invite my good friend Todd Murray, who's doing a show tonight with a big band at the Cicada downtown. And he's going to close the show. Isn't he dreamy? Right? Let's give it up for Mr. Todd Murray.
Thank you, Larry. I look for phrases to sing your praises, but there aren't any magic adjectives to tell you all you are. You're just too marvelous for words. I'm glorious, glamorous, and I don't stand by amorous. It's all too wonderful. I'll never find the words that say enough, tell enough. I mean, they just aren't swell enough. You're much, too much, and just too very, very to ever be in Webster's dictionary. And so I'm borrowing a love song from the birds to tell you that you're marvelous, too marvelous for words. Now this song is written by Johnny Mercer and Richard Whiting. Now you know Johnny Mercer, very prolific, Atchison to Binghamton, Santa Fe, Maybe It's Cold Outside. Richard Whiting, the composer, was was a big deal earlier on. He did Hooray for Hollywood and Good Ship Lollipop and Breezing Along with the Breeze. Well, I was good friends with Richard Whiting's daughter, Margaret Whiting, who was also an amazing singer, very famous for Moonlight in Vermont. And her daughter, Debbie, is carrying on her legacy. And I called Debbie yesterday and I said, hey, I'm doing your grandfather's song. Do you know any good dirt on the song? And she said, yeah, I do. She said, Too Marvelous was written in 1937 for a movie. And they loved the song. They were going to do a big production number with it. But they called Johnny Mercer and said, love the tune, we're going to use it. Now we need 7 more verses. Now, Richard Whiting was the composer, so his job was done. But Mercer called Richard Whiting and said, oh my God, where am I going to come up with all these verses? The next day, Johnny Mercer opens a box, and in it, from Richard Whiting, was a Webster's dictionary, which is where we got the lyric. Oh, you're much, too much, and just too very, very to ever be in a Webster's dictionary. And so I'm borrowing a love song from the birds to tell you that you're marvelous. Oh, to tell you that you're marvelous. To tell you that you're marvelous for words. Thank you. Marty Hillman. Thank you.
Mr. Todd Murray. Marty. Yes. Thank you. Take a bow. All right. I'm forcing the performers to hang out in the lobby and be nice to you. So we encourage you to stick around. You can find us on Facebook. You can find us on our website, Strong Words Live. You can find us on Twitter. But please, if you've never been, we do this every month in Atwater Village. And next month, on April 7th, Jimmy, April 7th? The death of me. We're doing an all-Chicago show, all performers from Chicago. And the very first thing they all said when they agreed to do it was, we're going to need 2 bartenders. So find us any way you can, and thank you so much for spending. What a great question from the audience. I'm so glad we had this time. It's free. It's always free. And as long as you keep coming, we'll keep spinning. All right? Thank you so much.